Hey there, friend. I have an incredible word for you. I want to share with you today about recognizing the patterns of God, the designs of God. I want to share with you how to respond when you've received a promise from God, but it doesn't look anything like what you thought it should look like. What it looks like in the natural doesn't look like anything that God promised you. How do you respond to that? How do you handle that? Small beginnings. Why is it that as believers, we so much despise the days of little beginnings? We don't like it when things look small. In Zechariah 4:10, it says, "For who has despised the day of small things?" In one translation, it actually says it this way: "Who with reason would despise the day of small things?" See, when we put our hand to something and it doesn't look immediately successful, we get offended, we get discouraged, and eventually we just stumble. Why is that? I think it's because we don't recognize the patterns of God in His Word, and we don't know how to apply those patterns to our lives. See, I don't know of anyone who has made a profound positive impact on the world that didn't start small. Jesus of Nazareth. Have you ever wondered what Nazareth means? Most scholars believe that it means a shoot or a sprout. It could also mean a branch of no significance. Imagine the Son of God coming out of a place, out of a city, out of a town that means branch of no significance. Somehow, God didn't think that was a problem. And even in John chapter 1, verse 46, when Philip told Nathanael, "Hey, we found the one that Moses and the prophets spoke about," Nathanael answered him, "Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip replied, "Come and see." So Nazareth obviously wasn't the type of place that anybody expected something significant to happen. A shoot, a sprout. That's how Isaiah the prophet describes the Messiah in Isaiah 53 verse 2. He says, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." A tender plant, a root out of dry ground. That is how the Christ, the Messiah from God, is described. So think about it. Jesus is the Son of God, and when he came to the earth, he didn't choose to come as a huge tree or as a huge boulder, but the Bible describes him as a tender plant and as a root. Here we begin to see the pattern of God, the pattern of how God likes to do things. He likes to start small. Born as a baby in a manger. This is talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. "And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn." Really? This is the whole salvation plan of God, with little bitty toes and little bitty fingers. Why didn't he just come as a full-blown grown man? Instead, he came as a small root that has to grow out of dry ground. Instead, he came as a baby. A carpenter's son. What type of family was the Son of God born into? He was a carpenter's son. What is significant about that? Nothing, seemingly. I mean, so much so that the Jews were offended at him because of this, and they wouldn't even believe that he was the Messiah. Let's look at Matthew 13 from verse 53. "Now it came to pass, when Jesus had finished these parables, that he departed from there. When he had come to his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, 'Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this man get all these things?' So they were offended at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house. Now, he did not do mighty works there because of their unbelief. They couldn't get over the idea that God would send his son to be part of a carpenter's family, because that doesn't seem significant, it doesn't seem extravagant, it doesn't seem flamboyant, and yet it is the pattern of God, it is the design of God. Elijah's cloud. I want you to see the pattern of how God does great things through things that seem small and significant. Let's look at how God worked with Elijah when Elijah prayed for rain. 1 Kings chapter 18 from verse 41. Then Elijah said to Ahab, go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel. Then he bowed down on the ground and put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. So he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And 7 times he said, go again. Then it came to pass the 7th time that he said, there is a cloud as small as a man's hand, rising out of the sea. So he said, go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Now it happened in the meantime that the sky became black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy rain. So Ahab rode away and went to Jezreel. All Elijah's servant saw was a cloud the size of a hand. And Elijah took that as a sign that indeed he had already received what God promised, because God had given him a promise that if you go show yourself to Ahab, I will send rain. Now I want you to think about this. It has not rained for 3.5 years. There is famine in the land, and Elijah has already given a word to Ahab that rain is going to come. And he prayed 7 times. You would think that there would be lightning and thunder. There was nothing until the 7th time, and the only sign that he was given was a cloud the size of a man's hand. God does amazingly great things through seemingly small people and through seemingly small things. We have to recognize the design of God, the pattern of God. Then we have to apply that pattern to our lives. The kingdom is like a seed. Jesus says the kingdom of God is like a seed that in its appearance is so small. It's smaller than all the other seeds. Yet it grows very fast until it becomes greater than the herbs and becomes a tree. Let's look at Matthew 13 from verse 31. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is greater than the herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. I want you to ponder that for a minute. Even the kingdom of God begins small, like a seed, but it carries great potential in it. This is the pattern of God. So whether you are building a business or a family or a relationship, or maybe a ministry, and it doesn't look like what you think it was going to look like. It might be small. There might not be a lot of resources. There might not be a lot of people coming. Maybe you are expecting thousands of people to be a part of your vision, but you only have 2 or 3. Listen, don't be discouraged, because that is classic God. I'm telling you, that is classic God. Just make a decision to ignore whatever you're seeing in the natural and keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on the promise. Continue to remind yourself of all these examples of people that were in the pattern of God, and they choose to exercise faith. They choose to trust God instead of being discouraged by what they saw in the natural. So whatever you have put your hand to do, whatever vision God is giving you, I want to encourage you to continue to be faithful, to continue to say what God says, and to recognize that you haven't failed. Because when you are in perfect obedience to God, there is nothing like failure. Just because the situation doesn't look successful according to the world's definition of success does not mean that God isn't in it. So stick with it and keep trusting God. I want to leave you with a verse from Job chapter 8, verse 7. This is the LEB translation. It says, "Though your beginning was small, your end will be very great." And I believe that is a prophetic word for someone watching me today, that though your beginning seems small, it doesn't seem significant. Listen, even Jesus, the Son of God, born in a manger, came from a place, Nazareth, which means branch of no significance. It may not look significant right now. It may look very small, but God is promising you that your end shall be very great. So I want you to grab a hold of that prophetic word, hold on to it in your heart, meditate on it until you get to experience the fulfillment of everything God has promised you. It has been my absolute pleasure to share this word with you. And would you do me a favor? If this teaching has been a blessing to you, share it with someone. Give me a thumbs up so that I know that you've enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. And don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you can get more teachings and more notifications every time I share new content. Until next time, be blessed. Bye.